tonight pays tribute to one of Sri Lanka's great maestros of dance, a man who has become a part of the country's cultural heritage.
Yes, Chitrasena.
Bonjour, hello everyone, I'm Yasmin.
And I am Kumar.
That was a flashback of one of our Bonsoir programs of how many years ago was it?
Goes back exactly 30 years ago for this year. And the good news is that we are back again, older and grayer and wiser.
I hope so.
With a taste of France all over again.
And the new show is called Rendezvous with
Yasmin
and Kumar.
It's hosted on the YouTube channel of the Embassy of France in Sri Lanka.
And it's all about French connections.
And comes to you on the
30th
of every month. Today, for the premiere of Rendezvous, we are honoured with the presence of Monsieur Lavertu, the Ambassador for France in Sri Lanka and the Maldives.
Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, bienvenue à la première de notre émission Rendez-vous.
Bienvenue à la résidence de France. I'm very happy to be the first guest of this new emission of Rendez-vous.
Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, you are in Sri Lanka for, I think, about 2.5 years now. And you'll agree that diplomatic ties between our two countries are of greater significance, given the fact that they go back more than 3 centuries.
Now, can you take us back way back to 1672 when the French Lieutenant Delanerolle came to Sri Lanka, Ceylon at that time, with the French naval expedition and was sent as ambassador to the Canadian Court of King Rajasinghe II. And he made a very bold decision not to return to France, but to stay back and make a life here.
Yeah, what is your interpretation of Ambassador Delanerolle staying back in Ceylon and integrating himself with local society?
So, of course, it's a bit difficult to understand exactly what happened some centuries ago, but I think Ambassador Delanerolle left the Escadre de Perse in Trincomalee and went to Kandy, and I think at one point it's a love story. He fell in love with Sri Lanka, Ceylon, Kandy. We don't know exactly. He was a man of the 17th century. He was a man to be ready to new discoveries and to new adventures. Of course, somebody who left France at that time went to Orient and was courageous enough to go nearly alone in Kandy, was an adventurous man. He found in Kandy a way which was not so far from what he knew. I mean, France at that time was a kingdom with a king and an aristocracy. Okay. And of course, that was not so far of what he knew, but that was also very different. And I think the alliance between this same way of living and a very different way of living attracted him, and he stayed in Kandy. And certainly after he established him, he had a family, and he has now the brother Delanerolle,
the brothers Delanerolle,
who are very well known in Sri Lanka.
And his the descendants go back into 12
generations. Yes. So definitely it was a love story because the way he integrated completely into local society. And then can we now go back just 1.5 centuries ago when the first French vice consul, Monsieur Grimblot, came. And that was in 1859 to
59,
1865.
Now, during his stay in Ceylon, he painstakingly collected lots of ancient Buddhist manuscripts, and these are part of the best possible collection of ancient texts in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris.
What do you think this interest in relatively unknown subject at that time?
I must say that diplomats at that time were very often scientists, connoisseurs of the culture of the country where they were posted. And Mr. Grimblot was one of these diplomats. I mean, he was himself an Orientalist. He knew Pali from some stay in India before. So that was a very talented person and very much interested in the place where he was posted. And unfortunately, he died quite early.
Before his works could be published.
Yeah, and so his wife tried to publish, and it's a very, very important capital for the studies on Ceylon and Sri Lanka, of course on Buddhism. So that's he was not the only one, and still we have people very much involved in the diplomatic service, very much involved in the knowledge of a culture. For example, our ambassador to Thailand now was the director of the H.E. department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he's he knows very well Tibet and the culture. He did PhD on Tibet. I mean, we still have this kind of person. I'm not at that point an Orientalist, but of course I was very much involved, for example, on studies on Afghanistan, where I served quite a number of years ago.
Okay.
So, you know, still the legacy of Mr. Grimblot is still there.
Lovely. So now we fast forward to 1948, when France was one of the first countries to establish ties in the newly independent Ceylon.
And that's when the government of France designated Monsieur Lionel Pinoteau as Special Envoy and Plenipotentiary Minister for France in Colombo.
How do you see his functions, his role at that time
In 1948.
as opposed to yours now in 2021?
Of course, we established quite immediately a relation with Ceylon just after the independence, the same year of the independence, and we were present at the ceremony of independence. So, of course, that was a very important place to be for French diplomacy at that time. At that time, we were still in Indochina, as you know, and it was extremely important for us to have this connection with Ceylon, and we had a merchant line calling in Colombo nearly every week, going to Indochina and going after that to the Pacific Island. So, of course, that was important. That was important diplomatically. That was important for our commerce, and of course, that was a complement of our presence, of course, in India. So we value this relation, this very old relation with Ceylon and Sri Lanka now. Still, it's quite the same idea or the same principle, I would say, to establish and to have good relation with authorities, to know the country and to try to explain to our authorities what is this country and all the aspects of this country, try to push for more commercial and economic ties, and of course, and that's, I would say, it's our mark in the diplomatic service. It's also to push for culture, art, and a good knowledge of culture and art of between the two countries. At the beginning, it's the same, exactly the same principle that we are following, that Mr. Pinotto 70 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Lamas. Interesting, going back, way back to the court of Rajasinghe II. And now here we are in 2021 and Franco-Sri Lankan bilateral relations in a modern day context.
But that's after our short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to our rendezvous with our guest, His Excellency, Monsieur Eric Lavertu, Ambassador for France in Sri Lanka.
And the Maldives.
And the
Mr.
Maldives.
Lamas, today in 2021, how do you see Franco-Sri Lankan bilateral relations, which are of mutual benefit to both your country and ours?
So first of all, our relations are excellent. We have a very good relation with Sri Lanka, of course. Unfortunately, the situation with COVID is difficult to handle. To have, visit, mission, artists to come to Sri Lanka, and for Sri Lankan to go to France. So, but we will overcome that. The relation is, of course, diplomatic relation. We have exchanges with the authorities of Sri Lanka. We had last year, just before the curfew in end of February, the visit of the head of our ASEAN desk in Paris, and we had another view of our relation. So it was quite interesting. Unfortunately, of course, after that, the two countries were under the curfew and confinement. So, I mean, we are still in the same situation now. So, of course, it's a problem. But certainly, we will have over time and better time.
Can you also tell us now, elaborate a bit your projects in the fields of culture, economy, technology, and others that would further strengthen French ties in Sri Lanka?
Alors, I will begin with economy, if you allow me. We had, of course, we have exchanges. The exchanges are to the benefits of the Sri Lankan economy. I mean, Sri Lankan export far more products than to France. That's France to Sri Lanka, of course. And these products are what you can imagine. Some agricultural products like tea or spices and things like that. Plenty of rubber products from Sri Lanka. So a bit of fish and products of fisheries. Of course, the most important is garments and textiles from Sri Lanka. And we, of course, Sri Lanka import some machineries, sometimes Airbus airplane, and pharmaceutical products. But I mean, the benefit is for the economy of Sri Lanka. But we have also big project here. We had two French companies, Veolia in Suez, a water plant inaugurated by the Prime Minister in November, and in Kelania River, and Veolia, it's completing a big project in Matale district for water, to provide water in countryside. That's a very good illustration of the work together of French companies, Sri Lankan companies, water board, authorities of Sri Lanka to develop the program Water for All of the President. When I was in Matale last week, I first visited a project on preschool education that we have in Sri Lanka for nearly 10 years. So that was very interesting to see, of course, the kids of the preschool in countryside, but also to discuss and to meet the teachers. These teachers were trained and by this program, and I was very, very proud of this program. And after that, I had the pleasure to be with the Minister for Power to be present at the inauguration of the substation in Newala Pitia. It's a project financed by French Agency for Development with Ceylon Electrical Board, and it's a very good operation, and the minister was very happy. We enjoy this moment to have a special substation in a position to put in the grid the production of a hydro water plant in the countryside, deep in the countryside, and that's always a pleasure to be present on this occasion, especially when it is for the benefits of the population of Sri Lanka.
Now, in the field of culture, what are your projects?
Of course, we are. France is well known for the importance that we give to culture. So, of course, here we have our network of Alliance Française, in four cities, in Colombo, Kandy, Jaffna, and Matara. So it's quite a big network for a country like Sri Lanka. Of course, those days are more difficult than before, but we are, even if it's complicated, we try to continue to have, program of cinema, program of culture through internet, of course, and also to provide a class of French, still for the time being through internet and Zoom or whatever application. But soon, I think in April, we will reopen because the schools are reopening, so we will reopen all the Alliance Française. That, for example, our Alliance Française in Jaffna, it's in Jaffna from 76. It was created in 76. We had to close it during the difficult time of the conflict, and it was reopened in 2004. And the Alliance Française de Jaffna has a special program of digitalization of the archives of the Archbishop of Jaffna, in order to protect most of these archives, because these archives, most of them are in French, because many French priests came in Sri Lanka or in Ceylon at that time, from the mid-1850s to 1950s, and they were the person teach and who develops the clergy Catholic clergy in Sri Lanka. And that's a special program and a very interesting program. And of course, we will try and we will pursue our program for culture, and especially I hope this year with the French Spring Festival. As you know, unfortunately last year it was not possible to have the French Spring, but I was lucky enough to see the French Spring Festival in 2019. And it was a very, very good festival.
Okay.
You know it, you were part of it. So I hope we will be in a position to have it. Maybe only with a Sri Lankan artist, but we will try to work on that and to have a nice and interesting festival.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Great pleasure as always talking to you. Et merci de nous avoir accueillis ici à la résidence de France aujourd'hui.
Et de votre présence à Rendez-Vous. So that brings us to the end of our maiden edition of Rendez-Vous with
Yasmin
and Kumar.
we meet you again in a fortnight from today.
Au revoir.
À la prochaine.